ladies, welcome back to Demystifying Men with yours truly, Rachel Davis. All right, ladies, welcome back to this week's installment of Demystifying Men with yours truly, Rachel Davis. It is an absolute honor and pleasure for me to introduce to you our guest for this week's show. This man really needs no introduction. I mean, he is a network marketing icon. And why is that important? It's important because he did not just create success for himself, but he created success for other people as well. And we want to feature and highlight that. He's an entrepreneur. He is a cryptocurrency expert. He has dabbled in and is experiencing significant success in e-commerce. And that's just the accolades in association to his professional side. He is a husband. He is a father. He is a son. And he is a lot of things to a lot of people. But ladies, I am honored to be able to have this gentleman on our show today because he's someone that I looked up to and admired from afar for so many years. So without further ado, ladies, I want to welcome you to this week's installment of Demystifying Men with yours truly, none other than the very own powerful husband, father, entrepreneur, Mr. Steve Carter.
Listen, Rachel, I can't go wrong with an introduction like that. So you set the tone beautifully. I'm honored to be here. And just the way you eloquently articulated that, I'm looking forward to this interview. I'm proud of what you're doing. I'm excited to be here. And I look forward to sharing my story. And hopefully this can be a blessing to your listeners in any way that you deem it to be. And that's the purpose of me accepting this. So I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. And we're excited to have you. Now, we're going to go ahead and delve right into this interview because I have a lot of juicy information and content that I want you to share. I want you to provide wisdom and knowledge and information that I think will help our ladies, number one, to be able to identify who a king is, what a king does, and how a king shows up for not only his queen, but his kingdom. You know, my biggest pet peeve is women who are referring to men as kings, and these kings that they're referring to are nothing but jokers and paupers. And you're you're far from being any of that. And again, we're elated and excited to have you. First segment in terms of how I want to kick off this interview is I would love for us to talk about your marriage, your love life to your beautiful wife, Pasha. And you guys have been together for an amazing amount of years. You've got beautiful children together. You've built an amazing kingdom. And I would love for you to tell our viewers a little bit about the early years. Let's start with How did you guys meet and what was that experience like?
Sure. Well, I tell you, it's ironic that question leads off this interview because you don't even know this, Rachel, but we just celebrated our 20-year wedding anniversary just on October the 26th. So not even a week and a half ago.
Wow.
Something like that. 2 weeks ago, I guess, something like that. But 20 years. And
timing is incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been the best 20 years of my life. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you one of the things that I actually met Pasha, just to kind of take you back to the beginning. I met Pasha at a business conference. And so I say to a lot of men and women that sometimes when you're just focused and following your dreams and your goals that you want to accomplish, sometimes God will give you something even bigger. And so I was in business, obviously looking to try to establish a career, generate income, become successful financially. And lo and behold, I end up at a conference, a business conference. I end up meeting the woman that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And so that was far more valuable than any dollar amount that I've made, because it's been very, very lucrative over the years. I've been humbled and blessed, and we've done pretty well financially, you know, especially when I just look at what most people accomplish. And so I'm very humbled that we've done extraordinary in terms of income levels and things like that. But I say that only to say this, Rachel, that there are things to me that are far more important than making the millions of dollars that I've made, because my family, my wife, all of that supersedes. I've said for many years, and I'll continue to keep it in this order: put God first, family second, business third.
Absolutely.
And when you do that, things tend to work out the way they should.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So tell us a little bit about that entrepreneurial journey with your wife, because in what I teach women in terms of men who are kingship, prior to them establishing this stage, prior to you getting to where you are, you have two types of men. Some men decide to build their kingdom with someone, and other men decide to build their kingdom alone. You, in essence, built your kingdom with your wife. How was that? Without question. How was that? And if you don't mind just delving into a little bit about how each individual person, meaning you and your wife, had separate skill sets and separate roles, and how you each played into that, and how to create homeostasis in the kingdom, you didn't take her role away from her, and I know she didn't take your role away from you.
Correct. Absolutely. I think one of the foundations that we laid early on was how we would treat each other. I think that that's more important than business. But of course, our approach to our relationship spilled over into business. And that's why it's become very, very successful. And I'll tell you something, Rachel, that a lot of people don't really believe when we say it. But one of the things that I will say very candidly, I'm being very authentic when I say this next statement that I'm going to say. Pasha and I have been married for 20 years, and we've never once had a big argument. Never. And a lot of people don't believe that. They think, relationships are hard, marriage is hard, it's tough. Well, we both knew what we were looking for. And I just believe that we respect each other enough to where our approach is always, hey, listen, if there's something that I've done that has bothered you, because I would never do anything intentionally to bother her or upset her, and vice versa. She would never do anything intentionally to upset me, because that's never been our mission. Our mission is to love each other, support each other, lift each other up. And so when we came together, one of the first things that we established was communication was key. Is that because neither one of us are perfect. To this day, we aren't. But if there's something that I've inadvertently done, or vice versa, let's discuss it. Because the first thing I think about, and I teach my children this as well, don't look at the results of what happened. Look at the source of where it came from, and first determine whether or not you feel that was something intentional or not. And I already know the answer is unequivocally no when it comes to, did she intentionally hurt my feelings? It doesn't mean she hadn't done something over 20 years that hasn't hurt my feelings. But at the same time, I always look at the person first. And so we may discuss things, and that has made a world of difference. Is just being honest, communicating, and treating each other with equal levels of respect.
I love that. I love that because my husband and I, we're encroaching on 11 years of marriage. We're not quite at 20 yet. Thank you so much. And he and I, till this very day, we have never had a major argument. And people don't believe me when I say that.
Yep.
That man has never raised his voice. I have never raised my voice. We've never not gone to bed angry at one another. It is a beautiful thing to understand how powerful, honest, open, transparent communication, and communication that is doled out in love, with love, makes a significant difference when it comes to overcoming situations and challenges as a couple. You're not going to have issues or challenges, but how you handle each other in that process makes a world of difference. Oh my, I'm so happy to be in the same club as you, Mr.
I
Carter.
love it. And I
I
am too,
love it.
because I'll tell you, Rachel, quite honestly, you are the first person. I've told this story countless times because it's our truth.
Right.
And I've never had anyone respond that they too are in that category of having never had a big argument, a big
Right.
fallout, big yelling and screaming, or, cussing and all fussing and all that stuff. We just have
Right.
never done it. And I don't know if we credit that to just the fact that we've always put personal development as a priority in our lives. And so we always try to look internally to decide, okay, what role did I play in this? As opposed to, I think when someone does not have the level of leadership in terms of mindset, then it's more comfortable to point the finger and say, you're the
Mm-hmm.
problem, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to looking internally and saying, well, how did I play a role in this? And that kind of thing. Because I just believe you said something earlier, Rachel, that's critically right on point. And that is, it's not necessarily what happens to us as much as it is how we respond to what happens to us. So
Exactly.
stuff's gonna happen. We've never been perfect,
Right.
but when it happens, it's like, okay, well, how do you handle that? And I'll give you an example just in terms of kids, because we've got 4 beautiful children. I'm sure you're going to touch on that as
I
well.
am.
Like my 2 boys. Boys are going to be boys, totally different from my girls. My girls are older. My 2 boys are currently 10 and 12, at the time of this recording. And they're typical boys, where whether it's basketball, whether it's, just wrestling up in the house, I mean, it's just a different vibe from girls. And I find them sometimes getting to a point where it gets out of control, and now they're mad at each other. And my older son, because my younger son looks up to him so much, if my older son says something that might be hurtful or something like that, every now and then my youngest son will get hurt enough to where, he walks out of the room with tears coming down his eyes. And I'll look at Steven, my older son, like, what happened? And he starts to explain how I didn't even do anything. I don't know why he's upset, blah, blah, blah. And I always stop him, because I look internally at how his mother and I, my wife and I, handle us. I said, Steven, the first thing you need to do is recognize that you did hurt his feelings. So whether you intended to or not is not as relevant as the fact that the result is that you did.
You did.
So
exactly.
Rather than defend your actions and talk about how you don't think you did anything to hurt his feelings, you obviously did, because that's the result. So you first need to let him know that's not what your intention was, then explain why you did or said what you said, because you got to first let him know you love him, and that's not what you meant to do. But don't ignore the fact that he's crying.
Right.
So that's the approach that I've taught, the kids, because that's just how I approach. If I realize I hurt Pasha's feelings for something, or vice versa, the first order of business is, hey, what happened? What did I do? Did I do something, say something? Because if I did, let's establish up front it was never intended. But regardless of that, I apologize if I inadvertently hurt your feelings, that kind of thing. So I just think it's a level of leadership and owning your participation in something that might be turning out in a way that you don't want.
Powerfully said. And, utilizing your children as an example was brilliant as well, because we've all been there as children, or, in terms of us being children or having children of our own, to see the discord that happens. But what you're doing is you're teaching your sons valuable concepts and principles on how to manage conflict, and how to be able to have those conflict resolution skills that will not only aid them in their relationship with each other, but it will help them in their own personal, intimate relationships as they get older, as well as relationships with individuals, that they're going to come in contact with as they continue on their journey and on their path to becoming adults and productive adults in society. So if more folks were to teach those principles to their children on how to handle conflict in a manner that is introspective, let's look at, instead of pointing the finger, look at the 3 fingers that are pointing back at you, so to speak. Exactly. addressed where you could have handled that situation differently, make amends, learn the lesson, and move on.
Amen.
Amen.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about personal development. And, to your point, my husband and I, we literally grew up in the network marketing industry, so to speak. And so as we were growing into two distinct and separate adults, personal development played a major role in how we developed to be the individuals that we are today. And you're right. When you know better, you do better.
Amen to that. That's exactly right, Rachel. We also grew up in the network marketing space, for 20 years. I got started back in January of 1996, long time ago. Pastor always teases me because she says she got started a year earlier, but in fact, it was December 95. So it was less than 30 days. So she doesn't have a year on me in terms of experience. But I will say this, personal development is still to this day such a critical aspect of the network marketing profession. And it does so much more than teach an individual how to build a network marketing company or business. Right. It actually shapes a human being in terms of just their everyday life. Right. And I think that that's important because I've always said, Rachel, and I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine recently, and I was commending him that before I became friends with him and before I met him, he was what I like to term my virtual mentor. And I think that there's, in today's day, virtual mentors are accessible to people every second of the day because we've got YouTube, we've got Google, we've got documentaries, we've got all kinds of things that we can access that will allow us to kind of get into the minds and the thoughts of the people we admire. And so I just think that the first order of business is to be very selective when it comes to who you choose to be a mentor. And I think a lot of times people hear that term and they think that that means you got to know that person. You got to be able to pick up the phone and call that person and get advice. That's not necessarily the case. I had many virtual mentors that some of them I did end up actually meeting. Like I had Tony Robbins. I met Tony. Robert Kiyosaki. I've met Robert Kiyosaki. John Maxwell. I've done events with John Maxwell now. So but had I never met them, they were still my mentor. They would have just remained virtual mentors, meaning there's some people in business. Now, personalities are everything. Some people love them, some people don't, but like Grant Cardone, I've never met Grant. But the point is, I like to study how he handles business, and things like that. So I think that up and coming entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or people that just want to become what I like to say, the best version of themselves, you've got to be selective with who you want to model your behavior or your approach or your personality like, because it's very important to know that you should always be yourself. But there are attributes in other people that you just admire. And it's perfectly okay to admire someone else and then say, I like the way that he moves, or I like the way she moves. And you want to study a little bit of how they do and, find out what their background is, find out what they've been through, if it's business or if it's sports or whatever, because I just believe that with this little thing right here called a cell phone, there's no reason that you can't get personal development every second of the day. Because now what we do, and I'll pause for the next question, but now what Pastor and I do is when my young boys are into sports right now, right? My girls are too. My girls, both of them were top cheerleaders and still are, right? But my boys, my oldest son is playing football and basketball, and then my younger son plays basketball. But when we're taking them to practice or we're taking them to a game, they know they don't have a choice. Like we tell them, get your AirPods out of your ear because we're on our way to practice or on our way to a game. Mommy turns on, YouTube, where it's motivational clips where you might hear Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or Floyd Mayweather. Or so they're talking about what it takes to win. They're talking about mindset of leadership and kingsmanship and stuff like that. So we want to instill that in them even when it's subconscious, because sometimes they'd rather be on their phone doing TikTok and Snapchat and all that mess. We're like, nope, you getting ready to go handle your business,
That's
which
right.
is your sports. But so you're going to listen to this to be in the right state of mind. So when you get there, you're unstoppable.
Wow. Fantastic parenting tip. And we haven't even gotten to the legacy part of kingship. But prior to segue into that section, I do have one other question for you, still based around your beautiful union with your wife. You have 20 years of wedded bliss, beautiful success story as far as love is concerned, in terms of partnership, which is one of the main attributes that men desire in marriage is, that partnership is a deciding factor as to who he decides to marry. It's not all of the other stuff that most women think. If you had to go back and take inventory of the last 20 years, what was your biggest lesson learned that had you not learned it would have been an outcome or would have created an outcome that you would have regret?
Absolutely. And are you referring to with passion, like
Yeah,
with my wife?
absolutely.
Okay, yeah. I always very proudly say this. And I say this not in any disrespect to a particular city, but I'm born and raised Chicago, right? Chicago has a certain flair, certain
Swag.
flavor.
Uh-huh.
And, one of the things that, depending on where you grow up, you kind of have a hustle type of mentality where it's like, hey, get it done by any means necessary. And one of the things that Pasha brought into my life was that moral compass, where being honest, always telling the truth, things like that, you just took for granted when, I'm not going to paint this picture that I was out in the streets, because my parents made sure that they kind of put that fire hedge to protect me around. But you grow up in Chicago, even if you're in what's considered the nicer areas, it's still nowhere near what I've been blessed to provide my kids. They leave their bikes out front on the porch and they know the bikes aren't going to get stolen. Like, that just wasn't how I grew up. It was like a different ball game. So when I got married, Pasha just kind of being that moral compass of always being truthful and always just being your authentic self. Like, you don't have to put on this front. You don't have to, it's just a difference of how I just saw how she operated. It was like, this is just who she is. And that was a big difference for me. That was a pivotal change in my thought process, in my psyche, where it was like, yeah, okay, I don't have to feel like I got to hustle and try to get over on somebody or think, I just like do things ethically, do things above board, always be truthful. And if you tell the truth, you never got to think about what you said before, because the truth will always, it always surfaces.
Right.
So that would be the biggest thing, is that, no telling what kind of outcome would have happened if I'd have, kind of stayed in that mindset of just kind of hustling and things like that, and I say hustle from a legal standpoint, because gotta clarify that sometimes.
You do. Sometimes you do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not that I've been an angel all my life, because I'm not going to sit here and say that. I've done some things that, I would never want my children to do. And you learn from those things, but you grow. I matured into becoming a very successful businessman now. And I credit my wife for just kind of instilling that moral compass.
Excellent. I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So, Steve, I want to segue into the legacy portion of kingship, and I share this throughout my program, throughout the show, throughout my books, a phrase that I've coined, and I'm going to probably put it on a t-shirt, but kings don't hustle, they rule.
Perfect. Yep. Perfect segue.
They rule.
And I had to realize that. Yep.
Absolutely. And so, but that's okay, because you evolve and you grow into that. And so I have a phrase that I've coined, and I think I may put it on a t-shirt. that
Right.
says, kings don't hustle, they rule. And what's beautiful about what you shared in terms of your story, that it was the queen that came into your life that helped establish homeostasis in your life, where you've gotten to the point where the ruling aspect is your identity and is who you are. And it's a testament to the contribution the right woman makes to a
That's right.
man's life in helping him evolve into his highest self and supporting him as he is able to reach his maximum beauty and become everything that God designed that individual, that man to become. And so when you've grown and you've matured and you've gotten to a place where financially all you're doing is surveying your kingdom now, you're making sure that your kingdom is protected. You're making sure that the people that's in your kingdom, they're well cared for.
That's right.
And in addition to that, as far as king status is concerned, what's a king without legacy,
That's
right?
right. That's
And
right.
for you, legacy, you've got four beautiful, legacies, so to speak, in terms of your children. So talk to us a little bit about what fatherhood means to you. And number two, how fatherhood has changed you or enhanced you and more or less have you very settled in this sage
Sure.
role at the stage in your life right now, as far as being
Well,
a father is concerned.
I love the word that you just stated, which is legacy. I jokingly tell this story that Passion and I, when we first had our two children, they were both girls, and I told her that we're going to keep on going until we at least have one boy. I don't care if we have to have 46 girls and one boy. I want the last name to continue.
Right,
And she
right.
agreed with that. Thank God we got our son on our third. And then I ended up saying, hey, babe, let's give him a brother so the girls can have their kinship and the boys can have theirs. And she was like, well, what makes you think we're going to have another boy? And I'm like, look, it's in God's plan. Let's do this. And we had another boy. So we
Beautiful.
got two girls, two boys.
Mhm.
They're currently, at the time of this recording, my oldest daughter is 17. My other daughter is 15, and my boys are 12 and 10. And I posted this. I don't know if you'll be able to see this on the interview, but I posted this just yesterday because my daughter, who's 17 years old, she just signed with a modeling agency, and
Yes.
she's 17, but this is my little baby right here,
Oh, she is
Um,
gorgeous.
that's my girl. So, and I put in the post, I said, it's hard to believe that this is who I was pushing around in a stroller, and now she just signed with a big modeling agency here in Dallas. And so I'm super proud of her. So that kind of leads me into your question, which is, what does fatherhood mean?
Right.
And it's really about legacy. It's about bringing people into this world and teaching them to be the best version of themselves, but to also know that their real goal is to leave this world in a better place than when they came in. And that's important because I think so many times people just go through life and they never really think about their contribution to the betterment of the world, because they think
Right.
of themselves as such a small piece of life, or a small piece of the world, I should say. But it's important that kids know their value and their worth. And we instill that in the children every single day. No matter what they do, we want them to be the best version of themselves when they do it, whether it's sports, whether it's class, school, whether it's, your job. My 17-year-old has a job as well, in addition to the modeling signing. But we teach them, look, how you do anything is how you do everything. So
Absolutely.
do your best at whatever it is. Don't ever find yourself slacking and just kind of coasting, because if you do that now, you'll develop that habit, because the
Mhm.
mind is a muscle, and that's what happens. You'll develop a habit of just being average or just kind of trying to skate by. And we teach these children, no, you've got a name to uphold. And we don't mean that from an arrogant standpoint, but look, you're representing your mother and I whenever you walk out of this house. So
Absolutely.
the same way we represent our parents and we represent them, so it goes both ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we always teach our children to just be conscious of being the best version of themselves. And Pastor always encourages them, get out there and make mistakes, and a lot of times people will think, well, that's counterintuitive to teach your children to go out. But we say, look, if you're not doing enough, you're not going to make mistakes. But if you're doing enough, you're going to make mistakes. And that's the best way to learn, is to get out there and do things so that you can learn what does work, what doesn't work, what to do, what not to do. And that's what we've always encouraged them to do.
I love that. You're encouraging. And most parents want to protect their children. They want to coddle their children. They don't want them to stub a toe, let alone go out into the real world and encourage them to make mistakes. That's a brilliant concept that I see the brilliance in that, because I remember myself growing up with my mom. She encouraged me to have certain experiences because, once you've experienced it, you're not necessarily going to thirst for it, because you're like, oh, wow, this was no big deal. And in terms of always having that guiding hand, so to speak, but also providing me with an opportunity to learn, to make mistakes, to realize, yes, that fire was hot, but you wouldn't have listened to me if if you didn't go out there and experience it.
To touch it, right?
You had to touch it. And she didn't stop me from touching it, because that was the way I learned, and I never touched it again. And so that's a brilliant concept about that in terms of fatherhood. And you have a lot of women who have children with men and feel as though just because that child is biologically his means that he's automatically going to step up to the plate and be a father. And in a lot of unfortunate cases, that is far from the truth. That is far from the truth. But you're definitely an example and the epitome of a man who, you have your children, you wanted your children, and you're instilling in them the qualities that they need to be progressive adults and progressive human beings in this world that they're going to inherit. Absolutely.
And the other thing I'm very conscious of as a father, especially to my girls, is to all four of them, because there's just two different sides of the coin that I'm teaching them through action, not through just lip service, but I always do a lot of talking. But I want my girls to see how a man is to treat a woman.
Yes.
And they don't have to look past the front door.
Yes.
And then I want my boys to see how they ought to treat a woman. And so I think the unfortunate circumstances of young men that don't have that father figure in their life, or if they do, if that father figure doesn't have the level of personal development and growth within them, then, a lot of things get duplicated. And so as leaders, we understand the power of, okay, what is it we're duplicating? Are we duplicating positive traits, or are we duplicating the negative traits? Because children are far more intelligent than we give them credit for. Absolutely. And they're watching and they're listening. So you can say certain things, but if you live a different way, they see that and that speaks louder. So I want my words to coincide with my actions so that they don't have to always hear me say it as much as they can watch me do it. And when they watch me treat their mom a certain way, because my girls always joke around and they say, you all never argue, you all never fuss and fight. And that's why I always tell my girls, and that's why if you're into a tiff or whatever with your boyfriend or whatever, you need to come talk to daddy or talk to mommy, because we tell you how to get around that, that sort of thing. But they recognize, they watch more than they listen.
I love it. See, ladies, I told you, we have a full-fledged king on this week's episode, and such words of wisdom in terms of, in everything that you said around being the example And I was having a conversation with someone earlier this week about that in terms of, you know, your children are watching, your children are learning more from you by watching you than they would ever hear with regards to what you're saying. And so it's incumbent upon you to be the example. You know, lip service is lip service, but again, it's the foundation that you're establishing as a woman today that is teaching your daughters how to be a woman tomorrow. It's not the conversation you have with her when she turns 16 that you think now is the time for us to have the talk. It was from day one up until 16 that she's learning to become a woman. So it's incumbent upon you to be able to be that example for her. I love it. I love it. How has fatherhood changed you though, in terms of, that? Lean into that.
Such a great way. In such a great
Yes.
way. I mean, I will never forget the minute I heard Will Smith say something a long time ago. He said, and this will date the statement, because what he stated, this particular technology doesn't even exist anymore. But he said, man, you get a big instructions manual with a VCR, a brand new VCR. He said, but then when you go to the doctor and you're handed your first child, they're like, congratulations, and there's no instructions.
Right.
And I got what he was saying. He was saying it like, this is the most valuable thing that I've ever done, and I don't know everything that I need to do. But it changed me, because what I did recognize immediately was that child is 100% dependent upon me and their mom, period. Right now, they did not choose to be in this world.
Right.
They did not choose their gender. They didn't choose. They are reliant upon all the guidance from us. And so it was very important. It was like that started a different Steve Carter, because I knew, okay, I've got to be that person for the rest of their life, or at least the rest of my life. You know, that I got to be there for them. So that changed me immediately. And then having girls, the fact that, you know, as a young man, and, you know, having dated girls and things like that, and I dated a lot, you know, and stuff like that, I immediately was like, oh yeah, I got to school my girls on just, you know, how this life works, you know, how boys work and all this kind of stuff. And then my boys, I'm like, look, I got to school them too, because I want them, especially nowadays with all the things you see taking place in media, you know, you just got to make sure that they're making wise decisions that don't alter their lives in a negative way, because nowadays everything's being recorded, everything's on camera and everything, and you got a whole lot more you can get in trouble for doing things because it's been recorded. You know, I think about when we came through and cell phones weren't really popular. I just think about a whole lot of stuff that friends of mine have done that had it been recorded, it'd be a different outcome for them. So
exactly.
So when it comes to these children, I just, you know, I look at parenting as putting that fire hedge of protection around them and rearing them to become beautiful, upstanding adults eventually, and going out here and contributing to the world. And so that's a lifelong responsibility, because even when they become 18, I tell my 17-year-old all the time, because she constantly reminds me that she's almost 18. And I tell her 18's a number. You're still my child.
That's right.
You're going to be my child even when you're 50.
That's right.
So it changed me forever that I've got a lifelong responsibility.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And being so open and transparent and talking about your personal life as far as being a husband and your beautiful wife and your children, and giving us an opportunity to more or less peek behind the curtains to understand the thought processes and the culture that you're establishing within your household, and how it's manifesting itself in a very beautiful way that we on the outside world can see and appreciate that as well, in terms of your parenting skills as well as your love life with your beautiful wife.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we teach the kids, and that this is Team Carter. You know, we're all in this together, and we all contribute in our own way. but I let them know if something's not done or things that they're supposed to do, because they've got their chores and little things like that. But we always let them know, look, you've got to contribute and play your role in the team.
That's
It's
right.
not just mommy and daddy gonna do everything. It's like everybody has a role, and when somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do, it affects all of us, and that's what I
Absolutely.
teach the family.
Absolutely. So let's segue into the final pillar that I would love for us to talk about is, in terms of the kingdom and legacy, and it's the entrepreneurial side, it's the
Mhm.
businessman side, it's the successful, Steve Carter side, it's the cryptocurrency guru side, the speaker side, the e-commerce side in terms of
Mhm.
building a business and legacy. It's, again, being an icon in the relationship marketing industry. Did I leave anything else out?
No, you hit everything.
I hit
You hit
everything.
everything
I
thus
hit
far,
everything
right?
thus far. And I have the feeling that you're just getting started.
I do
You're
too.
just warming up, right?
I do too. I
Let's
do too.
talk about that.
We've as we stated earlier in the interview,
Mhm.
we started our business career in network marketing.
Right.
And I'm forever grateful for that, because it taught a lot of different types of skills. One being the people skill, which
Right.
is extremely important, because it doesn't matter what business you're in, you're going to interact and deal with people. And so you have to learn how to interact with people. And I think that one of the things I learned a long time ago in terms of business is the most successful people, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter what industry that person is in, the most successful people, when you really strip it down to its core, what is it that they provide? And I can tell you what it is. They provide value to others. That's
Mm.
that's the most important attribute that or characteristic a person can have if he or she wants to become successful, is how do you provide value to other
Right.
people.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what your industry is, it doesn't matter what your expertise or your experience is. If you provide value, you're going to always be able to monetize, because your value is going to your worth is always going to be equivalent to the value that you provide.
Mhm.
And so I just believe that the more you focus on how can I help other people, how can I bless other people, how can I uplift other people, how can I guide other people, and we learned a lot of that through network marketing, because so many times when people join the organization, if they're in what's considered your downline, well, then you've got to try to set it up to where, how many success stories can we create? I think
Right.
many people instinctively think from a they counterintuitively think, well, how much money can I make? And it's normal to think that, but at the same time, you got to think about, well, how much money can I help them make, or how
Mm.
successful can I help them become? Because the minute you are able to help other people create independence, create their own success, and you attribute it to that, then you always have a connection with that person. So I believe everything that we do in life, everything that we do in business, you got to kind of try to keep score in your mind of how many people am I blessing? Because if you just track that,
Mhm.
then your worth is going to continue to increase, because when we first made our first million, and then we made multiple millions, it was because we grew a larger and a larger and a larger organization. And then what
Right.
ended up happening, I believe that God uh, always wants abundance for us, for all
Mhm.
of his children.
Mhm.
And the reality is, even when we made all kinds of money in network marketing, and that was our sole focus at the time, I'm very thankful and blessed that Pasha and I start thinking bigger than just attaching ourselves to a company and marketing a particular product or service. So
Right.
today, we're in a much bigger space where you mentioned some of the different things that we're doing, but we still teach and train and help others. And we've created a following right now to where we've termed something, Rachel, called a business menu. And so we provide a business menu. And the reason that I termed it a menu is because just like when you walk into a restaurant,
Mhm.
a patron can choose whatever he or she wants.
Right.
We don't, a restaurant never forces you to order this versus that.
Right.
Because we have been blessed to have found all these different things that make money passively online, all these, no matter what industry, we're able to say, hey family, we found something that we've added it to the menu. If you're interested, partake. If not, pass over it.
I love it.
It has become so big, and because no one feels any kind of pressure that we're trying to get them to do something for any kind of self-gain, because the one caveat is we tell people, if it's on the menu, Pasha and I are eating that. That's what we do. And so we're only going to put on the menu what we partake in. And if you're interested, let us know. And so we're building this network that's exponentially growing, but it's almost like we've created a multi-level with multiple businesses, and so it's just been phenomenal, because we've now created success stories where people that have never done cryptocurrency before in their lives, we've got testimonies, and we've had them now doing their videos, and we say, tell the truth only. But there are people that'll come on these videos, Rachel, and they'll say, look, I knew nothing about cryptocurrency. I plugged into what Steve and Pasha are doing. I invested $2,000 into this particular token. Today, I've got $38,000 in my account. And they can't believe it. They're like, what? But see, we understood that because I'm in the crypto space. I know.
Right.
X, 20X, 100X. I've heard stories of people that invested $800. 5 days later, they got 102,000. So I knew that was a business I wanted to be in, because I'm like, whoa, these are these kinds of returns. But not only did I want to learn it, then it was like, well, how can I bless others? How can I teach others how to do this? So all these things that we're doing, whether it's e-commerce, where we show people how to set up their own Amazon store, whether it's cryptocurrency and finding these pre-sales, whether it's just investing and earning higher yields, whether it's crowdfunding, where you've got a campaign or something, a cause that you want to fund, we do it all. And so we're teaching people how to do this, and it's been incredible. And I just see it scaling to no limits.
So what's on the menu? You mentioned crowdfunding, crypto, e-commerce, Amazon store, investments.
Yep. You
Did I
named
miss
everything. You got it.
I'm paying attention.
Yeah. And what's really a blessing, Rachel, is that, and of course, I always say this as a disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor, so this is not financial advice, but what I see very clearly is the things that we have on our menu individually can earn 7 figures. And the only reason I use that example of a number is because, since childhood, most of us are taught that the ultimate level of success is to become a millionaire. That's what we're taught, right? So when I find or look for different platforms, I ask myself, can this platform really realistically earn someone $1 million? And if the answer is yes, that's one criteria that we'll look at. And then secondly, is it something simple? Is it something that does not take a lot of their time? Is it something where they don't have to recruit? If it meets those criteria, it'll end up on our menu. And what we've been doing, Rachel, just so that you know, what we do is we will sit down and have an interview similar to this, an online interview, and we interview the people that are extremely successful with that particular platform or that particular business. And then we record that interview. Pasha and I do it together. And then all we do is upload that into our Facebook group, and everyone can see the interview, because we know that we can ask the questions through the lenses of the people that are going to see the interview. Right. So we ask all the questions that we know they're going to ask or that they're thinking. And so by the time the video is over, many of them are hitting us and saying, how do I get involved in this? How do I get involved in this? So we don't have to do any Zooms. We're not doing 3-way calls. We're not doing any of that stuff anymore, because all we're doing is we go out, scout these different things. If they meet the criteria, we put them on the menu, and then we allow people to just, hey, they have access to our menu. This is what we're doing. And then the other thing we do that we believe was really, really cool
Sure.
is anyone that has invited people into our network or into our Facebook group, we keep the hierarchy honest. And so if someone sends me a message and says, hey, Steve, I just saw this video, send me your link, I'm in. I always say, wait, who invited you into our group? That's the person's link that you need to get. And if they aren't involved in that particular platform, give them the opportunity to do so, or go to whomever got them in, and you go up the chain of command until you find the person that says, yes, I'm in that, here's my link. So they can't just get our link. So it's a safe environment for everybody in the group to bring more people into the group so that they can just continue to look at the menu as it grows.
Excellent. That's, again, for those of you that are watching, integrity, king-like kingship, quality, integrity. So I know we're I hate to have to wrap the interview up, but I know you're a very busy man, and I think, you know, we've had you for a significant amount of time, and I want to certainly thank you for that. But I want us to end this interview on two notes. The first note is, I want you to tell us the most impactful lesson that you've learned on your journey from where you were to where you are now. Something that is real, something that is intrinsic, a lesson that has changed you and the trajectory by which you lead up until this point. Because I know for you to get to where you are, you've had to learn a lot of lessons. For you to get to where you are, you've made a lot of mistakes. There's no 100%. Doubt about it. You know, for as many times that you've had successes, you've probably had 3 times the amount of failures before you got to where you are. So I know that to be fact. And I also want people to know how they can get in contact with you if they're interested in learning about what you have on your menu. Sure. But before we get to that, I really want our viewers to walk away having had learned something from you that can potentially shave off years of learning, or even, you know, lots of heartache and pain, because you've gone through that path. You can shelter them and save them from it just by you sharing one of the major lessons that you've learned in life up until this point.
That's a fantastic question. And I always like to answer questions where it's like, okay, let your heart speak. And the first thing that came to my mind, which is very relevant to what I think has attributed to where we are today, and that is, because I think in business times change, right? Times change, technologies change, all types of things as time moves forward. And one of the things that I know a lot of times we were taught, and many people were taught as children, is lock in on one thing, focus on it, and become the best at that. I think in 2021, that's a dangerous suggestion, because I just believe that being open to multiple streams and diversification is a lot safer. And that's only because when you look at the way business works, a lot of times there's turnover, there's attrition, and there's just companies that go out of business.
Right.
And I am unashamed to just talk candidly about some experiences that really can shape you. We got involved in one particular network marketing company where we spent 9 years with this company. Now think about this, 9 years. We built one incredible organization, and that was all we were focused on. We were just, that was it. Even though we didn't own it, but that was it. Made millions of dollars, probably in the neighborhood of somewhere between 8 and 10 million personal income. And I say that humbly, not arrogantly at all, but I like stating what happened, right?
Right.
But the thing is, something ended up happening within the corporate part of the company, nothing to do with us, where it changed everything. And so 9 years worth of building something, including the income, the organization, all of that, stops almost instantly because of something outside of our control. So I vowed to never allow that to happen again. Wasn't their fault. This was my fault, putting only that one egg in my basket and trying and doing my best, which we did a great job of being the best with that one egg. And it's like, no matter how big of an income you build, if that one income stops, your lifestyle can change instantly. And so I just encourage people, be open. I think God has given us the innate ability to do multiple things. And so as long as you can find some things where you mitigate your risks by having different things, because the whole premise of us creating the website, the Facebook page that we've created, is to eventually get the masses to have 10 different streams of income happening passively, so that if in fact, God forbid, something happens to one or two, or maybe even three, you still got 7 streams of cash flow.
Right.
And that is what, and so if you can find the things that don't consume your time to have to be entrenched with it every single day, and you can find multiple things that don't require that, but the money can work for you instead of you working for it, because as a human, we can't be everywhere at all times. Yeah. But your money, you put a suit and tie on your dollars, they will work harder for you than you could ever work for it. They don't take time off. They don't take vacations. They don't have lunch breaks. They don't get sick. They don't call in. That dollar will work for you way harder than you can work for it. So it's about working smarter, not harder. And so I will never, ever attach myself to one company and brand a company, let alone that I don't own, and as opposed to different opportunities, so that if something happens out of my control to anyone, I got other stuff in place where it's like you don't even blink. It's like, all right, let's just replace that. But lifestyle doesn't change at all.
You know what? We could have a whole entire episode just on that lesson, because we've been there several times, and I understand, especially as a leader, that folks are looking to for leadership, for guidance, and to be in a position where you gave your all and something happened unbeknownst to you that you had zero control over, can completely change the trajectory of not just your life, but for the tens of thousands and perhaps hundreds of thousands of people who look to you as that leader. And so the fact that you're in a position right now to take ownership of how you position yourself in the marketplace to mitigate that risk and to never have that happen to you or to anyone who looks to you for leadership to happen ever again really is a true testament of your evolution. It's that is the epitome of a king. The king takes care of his kingdom.
I was going to say, Rachel, the full circle moment that we're having right now is the fact that you said something where you said kings rule. Right. And what I just shared is an example of being totally in control of ruling your own environment.
I love it.
I can tell you right now, when you give the power to somebody else to dictate what your success level can become, or what it can, or the stopping of it becoming that, you've given your power away to someone else. I will never do that again. So in terms of feeling as though I'm ruling my own kingdom, 100%. 100%.
I love it. I love it. Steve, how can folks get in contact with you?
Well, sure, they can. I'm on Facebook, right? And they can look for VIP Global Network. And it's a beautiful banner. Got some red coloring in there, but VIP Global Network. Look for Steve Carter or Pasha Oliver Carter, and reach out to us online. Reach out to us. And I don't know if I can provide my email just in case.
Please do. Absolutely. Please do.
My email is my first and last name, Steve Carter Online at Gmail. Steve Carter Online at Gmail. So reach out to me and I'll happily provide, because our network is open to anyone, because it's a volunteer group that people just want to come, and even if they want to just come lay eyes on what we're doing and just kind of be a fly on the wall and see all the things that we offer. I just had someone hit me today and said, listen, Steve, man, I know you haven't heard from me, but I've actually been in your group for a while. You're doing a phenomenal job. He said, hey, man, I'm interested in this most recent thing you just posted. He said, nice. I need your link. And he'd been in for a while and I didn't know. So we know that eventually the menu is going to have something that's appetizing to people. So feel free to reach out to me or find the group on Facebook, VIP Global Network, and we'll let you in and take a look at what we're doing. And if we have something on the menu that fits your lifestyle, we gladly share it with you.
Excellent. VIP Global Network, ladies. I appreciate you for coming on to the show today. You really have blessed my spirit, and I'm sure you have you struck a chord and you've enhanced the viewers who watched this episode today. Thank your beautiful wife, Steve, for allowing us to be able to have a couple of minutes out of your day to be able to, again, show these ladies out here examples of what kings are, what kings look like, how they show up, how they lead, how they love, and how they rule. So ladies, this concludes this week's episode of Demystifying Men. Stay tuned for next week's episode as we have another amazing king that we will bring to you to be able to tie this season home. Take care, take charge. God bless, ladies, and have a fantastic day.
In the right place to move.